Hello, this is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator, welcoming you to AV Plus, the podcast for the commercial AV integration industry. We're really excited to be continuing our series of 40 Influencers Under 40 podcasts, in which we spotlight those who were honored this year as part of the 40 Influencers Under 40 class of 2022. In this podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Frank Padikkala, who is Technical Sales Engineer with Audinate. During our conversation, he talks about a lot of important issues, not least of which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within the commercial AV industry, as well as how AV industry companies can really make their employees and their associates feel valued and listened to and part of the team and part of the community. I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. I think you'll gain a lot from it. Thank you so much for always tuning into the AV Plus podcast, and thank you again for being here.
As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube page, and please subscribe to the AV Plus podcast on Apple and on Spotify.
Thank you so much, Frank, for being here today, and congratulations, of course, on being one of our 40 Influencers Under 40 class of 2022.
Thank you so much. It's a huge, huge honor. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
So let's get right into it, because I know you have a lot of insights to share, and I'm curious to kind of pick your brain about some of the most topical issues in our industry today, from the intentionality of career pipelines into commercial AV to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and feeling like people really belong in the companies they're part of. But first, I want just to kind of situate ourselves by giving our audience a sense of who you are, what your career trajectory has been, etc. So obviously, you're an influencer in general. You're a leader within Audinate. You're a very prominent member of the Audinate family. Tell us what has brought you there and what has brought you into commercial AV broadly, and a little bit about the path you followed.
So my journey into AV is quite interesting in that it's not the typical AV story where people say I just wound up in AV, and there's a lot of people with promising careers as musicians who then transitioned into audiovisual industry. I've always considered myself a technophile. I've loved technology from a very young age. I've been a fan of technology. I built my first computer when I was 12. I still remember playing with the first iteration of an HP laptop when I was a little kid. So there's a lot of computers and networks and history that went into. I got my CCNA when I was really young. So technology has always been a part of who I am. So with my perspective on what audiovisual technologies are, I consider it to be a part of that larger technology blanket, which includes IT, networking, security. So I would have ended up in AV or some adjacent industry. But this is what I got to say, right? I came here for the technology, but I'm staying here for the people. The sense of community that the audiovisual industry has is very, very unique. And I say that because I understand, and I've talked and dealt with several other industries. I'm a member of several communities. The camaraderie that we have, the way we welcome people is truly unique. It's underrated, honestly. So that's my highlight. And so my initial career was like I did all kinds of technology jobs, which included networking and consultancy. But at one point I thought, I really want to firm up my skills. To be honest, I wanted to go into IT and security. Honestly, cybersecurity was my huge passion at the time. So I went to school, I completed my bachelor's and my master's in cybersecurity, got a ton of certifications. And once I was done with that, I thought, all right, let's start looking for a job. Interestingly enough, one of the first offers that came through was with an integrator in the AV industry. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And I got into it as a design engineer. And serendipitous is what I describe my education path, because I did not plan it to work this way, but the timing of the audiovisual industry kind of embracing network technologies with my background in security and networking just seemed like a great fit. And that's kind of been my niche. And that is something that I share with everyone. There is a technology niche for you in this industry. It's big enough that you can have different roles and you can evolve and you can become whoever you want, as long as you're willing to put in the effort to educate yourself and constantly, reinvent yourself. Because that's how the technology works. There's no other industry out there that is evolving so fast. If you just look at a couple of years ago, the technologies that we had in our installs and our projects, it's completely different right now. Mm-hmm. So it's a very exciting industry to be a part of, but there is a little bit of effort if you want to keep reinventing yourself. Although there are plenty of niches that you can find and be perfectly fine for an extended period of time, which is what is also quite common. You see a lot of people in the AV industry who have not necessarily changed their roles in 10 years, 20 years. So there's room for everyone.
I certainly think that that's true. And you touched on a lot of valuable points in that opening answer. Obviously, I agree with you very, very much that the AV Tweeps community and the Pro AV community in general is incredibly tight-knit. And I think probably almost every industry has this sense that, oh, we're really special, we're singular, we're unique. But I think it really has the virtue of being true with us. When we go to shows like Infocom next year, when we go to Commercial Integrator Expo, you see a level of camaraderie, mutual support, mutual affection that I really don't think you're going to see in a whole lot of other trades and a whole lot of other conventions. People are genuinely thrilled to see each other. You know, the AV selfie phenomenon is a very, very real thing. We're recording this in mid-October. It was my birthday yesterday. Many people reached out, texted, you reached out on Twitter, wishing me a happy birthday. There's a personal touch that I don't really think you see in a whole lot of other industries. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you talked about the constant evolution, the dynamicism of our industry. Having been to every Infocom, for example, myself, from 2005 to now, it is incredible how dynamic the technology has been, how many evolutions, how many revolutions there have been. And you make a very, very good point that the systems our integrators were installing even 2 or 3 years ago look different from the systems that they're installing now. So it's a really attractive industry to be part of for those two reasons, I think. The people and the connections that we all have with each other, and the fact that it's a new challenge and a new landscape virtually every month.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And to really back to the point about our community. So as an engineer, I mean, engineers have this notorious stereotype. We're not really good at communicating. We're not good in front of people. And a lot of that is true because we have a very focused approach to the tasks at hand. So it doesn't really require us to be almost presenting in front of other people. But I think everything for me changed when COVID hit and things got into lockdown. And the first thing that I thought of was, I gotta find a community here. And I knew Twitter was active. So that's the first thing I did. I just started randomly tweeting. And my first experience was amazing. Everybody was so open. There's not a lot of things you can do for your fellow human being that's greater than giving them the gift of time. And that's what a lot of people did for me. Like they were fine talking to me. And I would ask them questions like, how did you do this? How did you build up your profile? And I will say I was very anxious in the beginning. I had a lot of anxiety as to, would I fit in? Because there's a lot of things about me that I know that makes me different from other people, as is this case with everyone. But how do I fit in? I think the first lesson that I learned was you can be yourself. It's perfectly fine to bring yourself to the community, to the social media platforms, and do what you're comfortable with. There is no pressure, and there should not be pressure. If you feel pressured, talk to someone. They'll help you out of it. And that's one of the first lessons I learned. And that's been life-changing for me. The fact that I got a 40 under 40 is probably the highlight of my life at this point. I've said this to my family because there were times when I've read the 40 under 40 every year. Like I've read that list. I look at the people, I go to their LinkedIn profiles. What do they do? What is their education? What's their jobs like? Because it's a good experience to just look at your peers and understand what they're doing. And it's a great list. And before this year, this list was not inclusive of people from manufacturers. And oddly enough, I made the move to a manufacturer last year, and I thought, good Lord, I'm never making this list again. And then you announced, and I saw the first thing I saw in your tweet was, this year we've changed the way we're bringing in people. It's open to everyone. I thought, oh my God, at least there's a chance. And then when I got your email saying that you've been nominated, I thought this is fantastic. So just the fact that even the 40 under 40 list has evolved to be more inclusive is just amazing. I'm super happy about that. I couldn't clearly I'm beaming. So that's a great opportunity for me as well.
And we really wanted to broaden it. So we appreciate the affirmation and the support that we've had in making that change, because as much as, we are a commercial integrator and we write to the integration channel and we're focused on the integration channel, there is so much talent, present company very much included in the manufacturer community, in the distributor community. It really felt like we were, kind of doubling down on a blind spot if we did not make that change. So I think it's really redounded to our benefit. It's yielded a stronger and more powerful list. list. So I appreciate your support in that. Let me just ask you a little bit about the 40 under 40 generally. And obviously, as an honoree, naturally one would expect you're supporting it. You said it's a highlight of your career. Do you have an opinion, though, about that AV Tweeps debate that kind of broke out maybe 2 months ago about whether it is valuable or whether it is not valuable to honor people on a metric centered on age? Do you feel like talking about young professionals is an important thing to do? Do you feel like it potentially is something that is ageist, is a term that was thrown around by a couple of people? Or do you feel like it's important to instill a feeling that our young professionals are valued and are recognized and are seen and are celebrated for what is already a very promising career?
I think there's a huge place for a 40 under 40 list in the AV industry, primarily because it's, I might sound biased here because I'm an honoree, but at the same time, I'm also the chair of the Diversity Council, and working on diversities and age diversity and tackling those challenges in the modern society is part of my goals. I work on that every day. But at the same time, you have to understand that the opportunities to highlight young talent are actually not that as common as you think they are. And a list like this puts a spotlight on individuals. Now, there are people on this list, and that's the beauty of 40 under 40. It's a diverse list where there will be people that are probably a little bit more popular. Some people are more active on the socials, so everybody knows there's name recognition there. And there are others that you've probably never heard of. So it gives you a variety of talent that says, all right, these are honorees. These are the people who have accomplished things, and they're being honored by their peers. Again, it's not a list that Commercial Integrator comes up. There's a nomination process that others have nominated you. So at some point, you've impacted someone at a career level, at an individual, at a personal level, at an industry level. Something's happened that they thought this person would be a great fit on that 40 under 40 list. So that spotlight is huge. And as people get more experience, and again, as they spend 20 and 30 years in the industry and they go above that 40, there are other recognitions out there. People get their career itself, for a lot of people, is a recognition. If somebody spent more than a decade in this industry, it's highly likely that regionally a lot of people already know that person from the work they do. So there are opportunities. Again, is there a possibility of opening it up and maybe having other types of honors? There are industry awards out there. But I think highlighting the youth is a critical step in building towards the next generation of audiovisual professionals. Where are we going to get our future from? And I think a list like this gives an opportunity for people to say, all right, I could do this. I could follow this. I can probably become like that. Because it's a generational thing as well. So, and the age disparity is great too. I mean, it's not like you have people who are all the way from 39 down to, like, I've seen in 1 year, I believe there was a 15-year-old on the 40 under 40 list, which is fantastic, which means that somebody recognized a contribution. So there's no age barrier within the 40 under 40 list, and it's a massive list. So I think it's great, and that's just my perspective on it.
Well, I think you kind of pinpointed a couple of interesting things there. One of which is it gives people who may be in high school or in trade school or in college or working out in the road as a roadie or something like that. It gives them a vision of people who may be similarly situated to them, of a similar generation to them, that are already being honored as leading contributors to the commercial AV industry. So it potentially can create a pathway. It can potentially create a vision where someone can say, I may not be an honoree now, but I see myself in her, or I see myself in him. And that could be me in 2 years, or that could be me in 3 years, rather than, seeing someone who is a seasoned veteran who has had, been the president of 3 companies. It's probably hard for someone who's in trade school to say, oh, I could be her or I could be him, because they're so far removed from that person's experience. To give people someone that they can identify with, to give people someone that they can see themselves in, I think has real value. I also want to touch on that idea of belonging, though. I mean, obviously, I know you are a member of, I think, the leader of the DEI Council, right? The AVIXA Diversity Council.
Correct. I'm the chair of the AVIXA Diversity Council.
The chair of the AVIXA Diversity Council. So you want people to feel like they have a place. You want people to feel like they belong in the industry as individuals, as they are, not that they have to fit a particular mold, not that they're pressured into being someone that they're not. Can you talk a little bit about not just the 40 under 40, but in general, this idea of belonging and this idea of inclusion, this idea of making people feel like they are part of something and they don't need to change or to be someone they're not to be part of it?
I think the most fundamental of human characteristics is our path or our want to be a part of something, which is what we call as belonging. And over the last few months, in every single opportunity that I've had to speak about it, and every speaking engagement that I've had on the DEI initiatives and the work of the Diversity Council, I've talked about belonging. It's unique. As you grow up, when you're a child, you want to belong to a family, which is why we identify with our parents, with whatever family structure you have. And as you grow up, the circle changes to your school, your high school, your college mates, and then your work. But all of a sudden, when we enter the workforce, there's this thought process which says, this is just a job. I'm just doing it because I have to pay rent. I'm just doing this because I have to pay off my bills. And there's no belonging in that statement.
Mm-hmm.
You are inherently detaching yourself, identifying something as a task that you have to do in order to survive, and you're pushing through it. And what's happening is people are taking a hit on their mental health because of this, because they don't feel the belonging. It's a task. Nobody likes to do a repetitive task. Nobody likes chores. A job should not be a chore. It should be something you belong to. And therein lies the audiovisual industry's biggest challenge. We have a large pool of creative people who are coming from an audiovisual background, a music background, who are artists, who have a creative side to them. And all of a sudden, you've taken that creativity and you said, let's put that in a box, use it at home, but at work, you're an engineer. At work, you're a PM. At work, you're a salesperson. And we don't care about you, the individual. We care about our KPIs. We care about our metrics. We care about our hours and our deliverables. No, that's not correct, because if you're spending close to 8 hours a day over the career of 20, 30 years, a large percentage of your life, I will say this, you probably spend more time talking and working on things with your coworkers than you do with your own family.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have a belonging there. That does not work. And that's what changed for me over the last few years. I've always loved technology. And there was a point in my life when I said to myself, the technology is always going to be there. That's always going to excite me because that's who I am. But the people are very important. And that's why, working at Audinate has been a huge blessing for me. I'm part of a great team. I work with some very, very fun individuals, Alicia, Luke, Bernie. They're just the names. We talk to each other for hours every day, work on things. And at every point of my day, even though we're accomplishing a lot of things for work, I also feel like I belong to something. And there is no solution as to how this can be accomplished. That's the challenge. Every team, every organization needs to find essentially what works for them and establish it. But it will not begin if you don't proactively try to implement these things. You need to be intentional about your efforts. So once you've established belonging as your core value, the next step in that path is that you start becoming inclusive. And in order to become inclusive, you start thinking about diversities, because there are several things out there that you don't understand. That's not who you are. You've never heard about it. And you start on this learning journey. And once you're educated, we reach equity. So, belonging, inclusion, diversity, equity, it's kind of the way I like to talk about it. And once you've established all of that, what you have is a community. And I think we're at a good point in our industry where we have a solid community, but we need to keep learning. We need to keep expanding the boundaries. And that's why I think lists like the 40 under 40 and the work that Commercial Integrator and the other media outlets do in just getting the word out is critical to this. Once we've done that, we can actually look into the next generation of talent.
Well, you're such an eloquent expositor of that message, Frank. There's no surprise that you are the chair of the AVIXA Diversity Council, because you speak so passionately, you speak so clearly and well about a topic that is essential for our industry. I want to talk about something that's also essential for our industry that is related in some ways to inclusion and belonging. The idea of having a purposeful track to bring people into this industry. Obviously, once they're here, we want to make sure they feel like they belong. We want them to feel like they're embraced and treated as equals. And we also want to have a diverse force of workers in our industry. But we also just want to make sure that people find their way here purposefully. I've talked to some 40 under 40 honorees where they're like, well, I started as a bartender, and then this happened, and then this happened, and now I'm in the AV industry. And they're contributing fabulously. But wouldn't it have been better? Wouldn't it be better if there was more of a magnet to attract people to us, rather than people just kind of fortunately ending up here? I can't even imagine how many people we could have missed out on, or we do missed out on, because they don't even know that you could be an AV integrator or an AV consultant or a design engineer. It isn't even on their radar screen. Do you have any ideas about how to make a more intentional path into our industry family, into our industry circle?
So Dan, that's very interesting that you bring that up. And it's something that I've actually heard before as a question about how do you get into the AV industry? So I'm a part of a small community here where I play pickup basketball, and I'm not really good at it, but I really enjoy playing it. And it's a good opportunity for me to interact with people, with young people of varying ages. We all the way from 18 to 30, mid 30s kind of. And I have one of them who's a good friend of mine, one of my best friends. And so one day I was talking to him about what I do for my work in the AV industry. And I said, you should look into it. We couldn't talk a lot. So he went back home. And what he did is he Googled how to get into the AV industry. He didn't get anything in his search results that really meant anything. And it was really confusing. There's a whole lot of information, and he had to go through multiple pages before he understood anything. So he called me up and he said, Frank, I know you're an influencer and you kind of work in the AV industry and you make these videos. It might not be a bad idea for you to just make a video and just post it there about, 10 steps or 10 things about the AV industry, just little highlights. And it struck a huge thought in my mind, because the fact is we're now talking to a generation who's grown up on Instagram and TikTok and their social media platforms, and that's how they get their information. We are a very traditional industry. Although our technology keeps evolving every year, I do not think our marketing processes and the way we approach the market in general are evolving. We're very slow to move. And that's where I think there needs to be more of a concerted effort from all the organizations out there and individuals to just get the word out as to what you're doing. How many people on these 40 under 40 calls that you've interviewed have probably said, I found it difficult to explain to my family what I do for a living, because it's not a simple thing to do. We can't just explain the AV industry. Now, it's unique because we're a juxtaposition of a ton of different things, right? We have science, we have art, we have physics, we have engineering, we have architecture. There's a lot of different technologies that come together to make what is the AV industry, but we still need to make it approachable. The barrier to entry to the industry cannot be, everyone in the AV industry starts down in the trenches. That's not an inclusive way of doing it. If somebody wants to be an engineer, there has to be an engineering path that they can do. And that's where organizations have the opportunity of creating associate level positions, entry level positions where they're investing into people. And yes, there is the inherent risk that once you invest and train somebody up, they will leave. But that's how life works. That's perfectly fine. Your investment into a person should not be a short-term goal. It needs to be a process. And if you build a culture where people feel like they've taught me so much, I need to be a part of this organization, I want to stay, they will stay. It's not like people are job hopping every day. It may seem like in this generation, because of LinkedIn, when everybody announces a new job, that, wow, everybody's changing jobs. Back in my day, nobody used to change jobs like this. Absolutely not true. People used to change jobs all the time. It's just that we know about it now. It's more prominent because of the socials. There's awareness to it. At the same time, a job change is not an easy thing. Now, I've changed jobs over the last 2 years several times, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's stressful Nobody wants to do it unless they're forced to do it. So while we need to market our industry to the younger generation out there, to the schools, to the colleges, as something that you can establish and survive and build a livelihood on, we also need to make our organizations inclusive and be intentional about it, and building a culture where we have people that want to retain themselves and not say, oh my God, coming into AV was the worst mistake of my life. That's where we need to be more proactive, talk to people, talk to your employees. It's more than that one-on-one review thing that you do once a year. There needs to be a culture of feedback, and organizations need to be agile in wanting to move and change their policies and not say, well, this is how we've always done it. That is the worst way to retain people. But those are just some of my thoughts on the topic.
That's very well said. And clearly you're an AV Plus podcast listener, because you've anticipated already that the next question I was going to ask, which is about that idea, not only of attracting people into our industry, but also retaining people, and specifically retaining the superstars like those we're honoring in the 40 Influencers Under 40. It goes without saying that organizations who have those 40 influencers under 40, those superstars, those people who are kind of beacons of how you can be a true success in the industry, they're going to want to hang on to those folks. And I don't want to make it super personal to you per se, but the idea of investing in your talent, whether it's education, whether it's training, whether it's just making sure they maximize all of the potential that they have and bring it to full actuality. Do you think that really is the key to retention broadly, especially retention of superstars? Or is that one part of it, and then the other part is abundant compensation or a really robust benefits package, or having new challenges every day? What would you say in general is the formula for hanging on to superstars?
So I'm going to start that answer off with saying how unique every individual is. Every person has a different challenge every day. We're evolving, we're changing. Just like the industry is evolving, our personal lives, which are now intertwined with your work, is also an evolutionary process. So what companies need to understand is that what you do today may work, may not work, but there is also a tomorrow. So it's a constant process of back and forth. The best way to retain and keep your employees is to understand their needs as they change. Organizations need to be agile about it. So if today my biggest challenge is I need to educate myself on something, yes, we're open to that. We'll help you train. But tomorrow, I might need a PTO. I might need a week's break. Does your organization have a policy where somebody who's a consistent performer, a star in your words, or somebody who's known in the industry, who's contributing to your team greatly, he's having a challenge in his personal life, and he's saying, I really need a break. I need to step away from this. Is there a place, and your response should not be, well, just exhaust all your PTO days, or which again is a limited number. Our HR policies need to align with where the society is at today. People want flexibility. People want to be free. And it leads to bigger conversations about remote work and hybrid work. And there's no one good answer that says it works. You got to find what's right for your department, for your team, for your organization, and be willing to back it. And obviously there's going to be failures in the path. You may not be successful. After doing everything possible, an organization may not be able to retain a person, or after trying everything, an employee still may not be happy. But that is the nature of human life. And accepting that these are people. We are not a tool. We are individuals, and understanding that will go a long way in building that retention path, not just for the people who are high performers and who've, become known in the industry, but everyone at every level seeks recognition. So if they've not been recognized by the industry, that's also a task that organizations need to find a way to say, hey, I see what you're doing. And a lot of times, just a phone call from your supervisor that says, hey, you've had a great week. I know you've been working hard. I appreciate what you do. Just a statement like that, which will take all of 3 minutes, and a quick conversation that is not work-related, will go a long, long way in cementing that person's faith in their supervisor and in their leadership. And that's the kind of proactive outreach that organizations need to be doing to be better at retaining people.
Well, I couldn't agree more, but I also just want to underscore and underline what you started with, which is recognizing that each of us are individuals and there is no master key to suit everyone's needs. Some people may be much more compensation focused. People may be much more focused on having PTO and flexibility. Some people may be able to want to work from home entirely, have the trust and have people have the confidence in them that they can do that. And other people might want an entirely different thing, new challenges, the ability to have higher education, underwritten higher education, things of that nature. The fact that all of us are individuals, all of us have our unique needs, and it's a little bit harder to be a manager and to keep track of everyone's needs and everyone's wants and everyone's desires, but it ultimately is going to pay dividends if you get the most out of your team and keep them around, keep them attracted to your organization, wedded to your organization, because they feel like they're recognized for the individuals that they are.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I really hope that that's the message that everybody hears. I'm not trying to say that things are not done right today. There are lots of great people out there. There are lots of great managers out there, but we really need to be intentional about these things because people really want to belong to something. They want to be a part of something. And it is up to the organization and the leader to find what's their trigger points, what's working, what's not working, and be constantly evolving in that path. And individuals too. There's lots of resources. You can reach out to the community, to the AV Tweeps community, to Dan, who I know is open to conversations with anyone at any time. And myself, I'm if you want to have a quick chat about what's wrong with your career, or I will give you my thoughts on it. There's nothing to it. And that's what you need to do. Invest into yourself too, because self-care goes a long way. A lot of times we do forget that, we're focusing on the high level things, but at its core, take care of yourself. We really need to be good at self-care. It's not something that comes naturally to most of us. Work on yourself too, and identify where you're feeling bad, where you're feeling weak. What can you work on? So it's a journey. It really is a journey.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think that's an excellent note to end on, because I do think people need to keep that firmly at the forefront of their mind, that the best care you can do is self-care, and keep track of your mental health, your emotional well-being. Make sure that you feel motivated and excited and engaged, and not like you're just doing drudgery all day long. So thank you so much, Frank, for your insights on that topic, all the other topics we discussed today. I really appreciate you appearing on the AV Plus podcast. And once again, congratulations on being a 40 influencer under 40 honoree. You're doing incredible work in the industry. I think you really are a beacon and a light for many of us. And it's wonderful for me as editor-in-chief of Commercial Integrator to have an opportunity to celebrate people like you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you very much.
So happy to have been joined by Frank Padikkala, who is Technical Sales Engineer with Audinate. My name is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator. Please check back on commercialintegrator.com each and every day, and be sure to pay special attention on Fridays when we drop the AV Plus podcast, the podcast for the commercial AV integration industry. Thanks so much, and have a great day.